The heir he never knew he had. Chief Adewale Okoro didn't build his empire by accepting defeat. From nothing, he'd clawed his way up, import-export, real estate, oil blocks, until his name alone could open doors across West Africa. His Lagos mansion sprawled across Victoria Island like a small kingdom, its marble floors cool even in the suffocating heat. But for all his wealth, there was one thing money couldn't buy: a son. His wife, Ngozi, had given him 3 daughters. Beautiful girls, all of them, Chioma, Adiz, and little Kemi. They were brilliant too. Chioma was studying medicine in London. Adiz had her mother's head for business. But Chief Okoro came from old traditions, and those traditions whispered in his ear late at night: a man without a son is a tree without roots. Who will carry your name when you're gone? Ngozi knew these whispers. She'd seen the way her husband's jaw tightened when his business partners asked about the boy, the way he'd turn away when Kemi reached for him. She'd prayed, God knows she prayed, in every church from Lekki to Ikeja. But her body had its own answers, and they were always the same. Grace was a maid girl from Benue. Grace arrived on a Tuesday. She was young, 23, maybe 24, with that particular type of beauty that didn't announce itself immediately but grew on you slowly, like dawn. She'd come from Benue State with nothing but a primary school certificate and hunger in her eyes. The type of hunger Chief Okoro recognized because he'd once felt it himself. Ngozi had hired her to help with the housework. She's respectful, Ngozi told her husband. Quiet. Works hard. Chief Okoro barely noticed her at first. She was furniture, part of the household machinery. But Grace noticed him. She noticed everything: how he took his coffee, black, no sugar, how his mood darkened when his daughters called from school, how he'd sometimes stand on the balcony at night, staring at the Lagos lights as if searching for something in the distance. 6 months passed. Then a year. It started innocently, a conversation here, a shared laugh there. Grace had a way of listening that made men feel understood. She didn't interrupt. Didn't judge. Just absorbed his words like parched earth soaking up rain. My wife is a good woman, Chief Okoro told her one evening when Ngozi had traveled to Enugu for her mother's funeral. They were alone in the house, the generator humming in the background. But she doesn't understand. A man needs legacy. Grace looked at him with those wide eyes. Yes, sir. A man must have someone to carry his name. It was the understanding that did it. The validation he'd been starving for. The pregnancy happened fast, or maybe it had been inevitable all along. Grace told him on a humid August morning, her hands trembling as she whispered the words. Chief Okoro felt something he hadn't felt in years: pure, unfiltered hope. You're sure? He asked. 3 tests, sir. All positive. His mind raced. Ngozi couldn't know, not yet. Not until he was certain. He'd heard too many stories of men counting chickens before they hatched, only to be disappointed. But this time it might be different. I have a house in Abuja, he said. Metoma. You'll stay there. Everything you need, doctor, food, security, I'll arrange it. Grace's eyes filled with tears. Thank you, sir. Thank you. He told Ngozi that Grace had a family emergency, that her mother was sick. Gave the girl 3 months advance salary and a generous bonus. Ngozi, kind-hearted as always, even added her own contribution. Tell her we are praying for her mother, she said. Chief Okoro looked at his wife and felt something twist in his chest. Guilt. Shame. He couldn't name it, so he pushed it down deep where he kept all the inconvenient emotions. December 15th, Chief Okoro was in a board meeting when his phone buzzed. A private number. He almost ignored it, but something made him step outside. Sir, it's time. Grace's voice, tight with pain. He left immediately, told his partners there was an emergency, jumped in his car, and drove like a man possessed through Lagos traffic. Got to the airport. Caught the next flight to Abuja. His hands shook the entire time. At the hospital, time moved like honey. Hours blurred together. Then, finally, a nurse emerged with a smile. "Congratulations, Chief. You have a son." A son. The word hit him like a physical thing. He pushed into the room, and there was Grace, exhausted but radiant, holding a small bundle wrapped in blue. She lifted the baby toward him. "His name," Chief Okoro said, his voice thick, "will be Adewale Jr." The baby had his eyes. His nose. There was no mistaking it. This was his blood, his legacy, his future. For 3 days, Chief Okoro stayed in Abuja. He couldn't leave. He'd hold his son for hours, watching the tiny chest rise and fall, counting fingers and toes, memorizing every detail. Grace would wake in the night to find him standing over the crib, just staring. "When will you tell her?" Grace finally asked on the 4th day. Chief Okoro turned to her. In the soft light of the Abuja house, with his son sleeping peacefully, something shifted in him. A decision crystallized. "Soon," he said. Very soon. But soon turned into weeks. Then months. Chief Okoro found himself making excuses to travel to Abuja. Business meetings. New opportunities. Ngozi didn't question it at first, he'd always been a busy man. But by the time Adewale Jr. was 6 months old, Chief Okoro was spending more time in Abuja than Lagos. The house in Maitama became his real home. Grace wasn't just the mother of his son anymore, she was his partner, his confidant, the woman who'd given him what he'd always wanted. She didn't nag. Didn't make demands. Just supported him, unconditionally. One night in May, as he watched Grace sing softly to their son, Chief Okoro made a decision. He called his lawyer. "I need you to prepare some documents," he said. Ngozi knew something was wrong when her husband stopped sleeping in their bed. He'd come home less and less, and when he did, he was distant, physically present but mentally somewhere else. She tried to reach him, tried to understand, but he'd built walls she couldn't scale. Then came the morning the lawyer arrived. Ngozi was having breakfast with Kemi when the doorbell rang. A thin man in a suit stood there with an envelope. "Mrs. Okoro. I'm here on behalf of your husband." Inside the envelope, divorce papers. The words blurred together. Irreconcilable differences. Separate residences. Division of assets. At the bottom, her husband's signature, already dried. Ngozi's hands went numb. "Where is he?" The lawyer cleared his throat. "Chief Okoro is currently residing in Abuja. He's started a new family, Ma. He asked me to inform you that. Get out. Ma. Get out of my house." After the lawyer left, Ngozi sat in the vast living room she'd decorated herself, surrounded by family photos that now felt like lies, and let the truth wash over her. There was another woman. There had probably always been another woman. And worse, there was a child. A son. The son her husband had wanted so desperately that he'd been willing to destroy everything they'd built together. Her phone rang. Chioma, calling from London. Ngozi let it go to voicemail. Then Adis called. Voicemail. She couldn't speak. Couldn't find words. Because the cruelest part wasn't the betrayal, though that cut deep enough. It was the realization that she'd been replaced. That 23 years of marriage, 3 daughters, countless memories and sacrifices, all of it had been conditional. Conditional on one thing she couldn't give him. In Abuja, Chief Okoro was building his new kingdom. Grace had transformed from housemaid to lady of the house. She dressed differently now, expensive wrappers, gold jewelry that caught the light. She'd enrolled in university courses, was learning to manage the household staff, to entertain his business associates. "You're doing well," he'd tell her, and she'd beam with pride. Little Adewale Jr. was growing fast, crawling now, babbling sounds that Chief Okoro swore were words. Every milestone felt like vindication. This was what he'd needed. This was what had been missing. When his friends visited, the ones who understood, the ones who had their own arrangements, they'd clap him on the back. "See you now. Finally, you have your heir." And Chief Okoro would smile, bouncing his son on his knee, feeling like his life had finally aligned with his dreams. But sometimes, late at night, when Grace was asleep and the baby was quiet, he'd find himself standing by the window, looking south toward Lagos. He'd think about Chioma's graduation he'd missed. About Adi's business proposal he'd never read. About little Kemi asking when Daddy was coming home. He'd pushed those thoughts away. Told himself he'd been trapped before, had been living a lie. This was his truth. His real family. The guilt would fade eventually. It always did. But here's the thing about foundations built on betrayal, they're never as solid as they appear. Chief Okoro had his son, yes. Had his new life. But in Lagos, Ngozi wasn't crumbling the way he'd expected. She was rising. Taking control of her portions of the business. Rallying her daughters. Building her own legacy. And Grace. She was comfortable now, secure. But she remembered what it was like to be powerless, to be at someone's mercy. And she couldn't help but wonder, if Chief Okoro could leave a wife of 23 years, what would stop him from leaving her when someone younger, prettier, more fertile came along? As for little Adewale Jr., sleeping peacefully in his expensive crib. He was too young to know he'd been born into a war. That his very existence had detonated a bomb that would send shockwaves through 3 lives, maybe 4. That the price of his father's happiness was his mother's heartbreak, his sister's abandonment, and a legacy built not on love but on obsession with bloodlines and traditions that maybe, just maybe, shouldn't matter as much as they do. Sometimes the thing you want most desperately is the thing that destroys everything you already had. And sometimes, by the time you realize that, it's far too late to turn back.